So it has now been around 2 weeks since we actually got the initial trailer for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and obviously the hype has died down slightly. That's always what happens when trailers come out. There's a bunch of hype and then obviously we don't hear anything for a little bit and we all kind of forget about it. But for me personally, I have been non-stop thinking about that trailer. Can't stop thinking about who that could possibly be in that sort of bacta tank or cloning chamber, as well as who that character is with the red lightsaber. So today we're going to be going through some of the best theories and speculations that I've heard out there around just who that could be in that bacta tank, as it does seem like that is going to be a pretty pivotal part of this game. Now, just to preface, I don't necessarily think that any of these are actually legitimate. The boring and most realistic answer is that it probably is just a new character and we're going to learn about that in the game. That's probably going to be the point of the game, but obviously Star Wars is very wacky and there's essentially an unlimited amount of things that could be the case. And so, like I said, although I don't think any of these are necessarily going to be the actual truth, they are all definitely possible. And although we may have to put the tinfoil hat on for some of these theories, I think it is just fun to speculate either way. Now, just quickly before we do get into it, I've got to give a big shout out to my partners at Glitch Energy. They produce the healthiest energy drink on the market, and they've actually just released 2 brand new flavors as well as a brand new flavor that isn't caffeinated and is more of a sort of post-workout drink that helps you recover and rehydrate. You guys will know me by now. I absolutely swear by this stuff and I drink it every single day to help me get through the days. So if you guys want to go and grab some for yourself, be sure to head to glitchenergy.com, and if you use code SAMI at the checkout, you guys can get 25% off your order. But with that being said, let's get stuck into the wacky theories that I've found across the internet. Now, the first thing that I need to say is that I'm essentially assuming that the person in the tank is the same person as the person who has the red lightsaber. Now, obviously that's jumping to a pretty big conclusion, but we know that the character with the saber is using it in their left hand, which is pretty rare. We don't really see that very often in Star Wars, and it looks like that character doesn't have a right arm. And then when we see the person in the bacta tank or the cloning chamber, whatever that may be, they appear to only have a left arm as well. So in a 1 minute and 23-second trailer where we've really learned nothing about the game, it seems odd that they would have 2 people with only their left arm. That just seems a little bit unrealistic to me personally, so I'm assuming that these 2 people are the same person. If not, then this video is essentially redundant, but I do think that is a relatively safe guess anyway. So we're essentially guessing not only who the person in the tank is, but also who that person is with the red lightsaber. Now, the first speculation or theory that I've seen around there, and this is something that I actually initially thought as well that could be the case, is that this person in the tank kind of looks a little bit like Cal. Now, obviously he's got this sort of mask over his face, sort of breathing apparatus there, and he's got long hair, so you can barely even see any of his face, and it sounds kind of weird saying it looks like Cal when you can see about like 8% of his entire body. But to me, the brow of this character does look at least a little bit similar to Cal, and although I'm not necessarily sold on this theory, I have seen this floated around there quite a bit. I've been searching over the Jedi Survivor Reddit, and there's a few people that kind of have that same thought process, where the first thing I think of is, wow, that kind of looks like Cal. Could this be a clone of Cal Kestis? Now, like I said, I don't necessarily think that is going to be the case, but I do think it is a possibility. We've seen a lot of stuff over the last few years in Star Wars kind of pointing towards cloning being a bit more of a regular thing, I guess. We all know of obviously the clone army. That's the first thing you think of when you think of the clones, but we now know that Palpatine was a clone of himself in The Rise of Skywalker. We know that they were trying to clone Grogu in the first season of The Mandalorian. We also saw those other weird like bacta tanks or cloning chambers in, I believe that was still season 1, but maybe season 2 of The Mandalorian, where they're in that like Imperial base and they stop and look at these weird floating things in the chambers. And then even at the end of the first season of The Bad Batch, when they arrive at Mount Tantus, or what we assume to be Mount Tantus, there are people there who are wearing the cloner symbol again. And so there's just been so many things across Star Wars in the last few years that have sort of pointed towards cloning. So again, I think this is definitely a little bit of a reach, but there is a chance this could be a clone of Cal somehow. I'm not sure how that would fit into the story, because I feel like Cal would have already known that he'd been cloned somehow, unless this is done in the game, for example. Maybe you see that happen, I'm not really sure, but this is kind of what I'm getting at. It doesn't really make sense for the story, but it is just kind of fun to think about, and I do agree that the brow of that character in the tank does look a lot like Cal, so very interesting to think about, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that one in the comments section. Now, the second one that I've seen out there, and this to me is probably the most realistic one, is that this could actually just be an injured Jedi who was fighting during the Clone Wars. They got hurt, they maybe lost their right arm. Obviously that character doesn't have their right arm, so they were put into the bacta tank to try and heal them, and all of a sudden Order 66 happened, the large majority of the Jedi were taken out, and this character could have been essentially forgotten about until now. So that is a theory that I've seen floating around there quite a bit as well. To me, this feels probably like the most realistic one. We know that Order 66 is a pretty large part of this game, and one thing that I think could make sense is that maybe, for example, Saw Gerrera knew about this person and he couldn't go and save him himself, and so maybe we meet up with Saw Gerrera again during Jedi Survivor, at which point he sort of points to us that there is an ally out there somewhere who's a former Jedi and has essentially been forgotten about since Order 66, which would have been 10 years ago at this point in the game, and we know that the sort of room that the bacta tank thing is in, it's very overgrown, so that would kind of point to maybe that person's been stuck in there for, 10 years, maybe even potentially longer, and so Cal is essentially tasked with going and trying to essentially rescue this unknown Jedi. Now, how that plays into the rest of it, like I said, this is all assuming that the person with the red saber is that same person. If that's to be true, then it wouldn't really make sense that the Jedi has a red saber, so either A, maybe they are just separate people, or B, and this is a bit of a tinfoil hat theory, but we know that Seer actually has Trilla's lightsaber, and what if Cal has actually saved this Jedi who was around during the Clone Wars and is actually now training with him to learn more about the Force and get some proper training, because obviously he was still a Padawan when this all happened, and the reason the character's using a red lightsaber is maybe that character is actually just using Trilla's lightsaber. Now, it doesn't look like that in the trailer because Trilla had that sort of circular hilt that pretty much all of the Inquisitors have, and it didn't look like that in the trailer, so I think that is a bit of a tinfoil hat theory there. I don't think that's going to be the case, and that's kind of contradicting my own point there, but that is one that's really interesting to think about, that this could just be some former Jedi who has essentially been forgotten about, and Cal is now tasked with going to find this character and essentially save them while also probably trying to learn more about the Force. Now, putting that tinfoil hat right back on, and this is easily the most wacky one that I've seen so far, and I've floated this out there a little bit too because that's who I thought this was initially, but there's a lot of people speculating or theorizing that this could be Revan. Now, I know Revan was from thousands of years ago, so it just really doesn't make sense why this would be Revan, but in the trailer, I think we all thought, like, wow, that looks so much like Revan. He's got the same sort of robes, he's got like a red and gold looking outfit underneath that robe, and we also know that Revan fought with two sabers, so it is possible that obviously if you lose your right arm, that character's already adept at using their left arm, and obviously that character is pretty strong because they beat Cal in that little fight scene. So a lot of people are saying, what if this is Revan that's been kind of frozen in time for thousands of years now? Personally, this one definitely feels like a bit of a reach to me, but at least in terms of the look of the character, this one easily is the most realistic in terms of the looks for me, because I just could have sworn it was Revan when we first saw the trailer. But obviously this one is definitely a little bit of a reach, but I thought it's a fun one to think about as well, so I thought it was worth mentioning anyway. Now, the very last one that I've got here is another one that is, I guess, a bit more on the realistic side compared to the other ones. Now, I personally don't think this is going to be the case, but a lot of people are saying, what if this is actually just Taron Malicos, who we obviously know from Jedi Fallen Order. Really, in that game, he didn't actually die because he was kind of like buried alive by Merrin. We never saw him actually die, he just went underground, and obviously we all assumed that he died because anyone who gets buried alive is going to die, but there is a chance that Malicos could have survived that, obviously. And then when it comes to the looks, obviously Malicos does have grey long hair, and obviously he had a beard, but we can't really see the beard because of that mask over their face. So I think this one is definitely slightly possible. I'm still thinking this is a little bit of a reach, because why would Malicos be in a bacta tank? Maybe he got hurt when he was getting buried alive, or not maybe, he obviously got hurt when he was being buried alive, but maybe that's why he's in the bacta tank. But just how he got to the bacta tank, why it's seemingly on a different planet, this doesn't look like Dathomir at all. That's where this one kind of starts to lose credibility, I guess, because it doesn't really add up. But I do think in terms of the looks of the character that is in the bacta tank or whatever it is, it definitely does look a little bit like Malicos. So I think this one is somewhat possible, and obviously just because Malicos was in the previous game, I'd imagine he's more realistic to appear in this game than someone like Revan, who's not even from this same era. But again, there are just some loose ends there that don't really make sense, like how would he get to that bacta tank that is seemingly on a different planet when he was obviously just buried alive. So I still think this one is a bit of a reach, but the other side of it is, again, he also fought with two sabers, one in each hand, so if he loses his right arm, he would still be very adept with his left hand. And so yeah, there's definitely some links there that make it seem slightly possible, but again, I don't think this is necessarily the case. But I did really like Malicos' character, so I think it would be pretty cool to see him return. I don't think he will, but I would be pretty happy if he did end up returning. So anyway, those are essentially the 4 most, I guess, prominent theories that I've seen out there on the internet. Like I said, I don't really think any of these are legitimate. I think the one about like an injured Jedi from the Clone Wars who was kind of lost in time, that one's definitely the most realistic, and I think that's a pretty decent chance of happening, but even then, I'm not really sure if that's the case. And again, all of these are assuming that the person in the tank is the same person who has the red lightsaber, so all of these could just be immediately incorrect. And the part that sucks is we are just essentially going to have to wait and see until we get some more trailers and start to piece the puzzle together a little bit better. With that being said though, I am very keen to hear your thoughts on both all of these speculations that I've talked about, but even your own theories as well. I know there are plenty of different theories out there, so definitely leave your thoughts down in the comments. Tell me which ones of these sound stupid, which ones sound the most interesting, and like I said, be sure to leave your own theories down in the comments as well. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.